So the same way that the Star Wars original trilogy, episodes 4, 5, and 6, were a response to the Vietnam War, not just in terms of, fighting styles, but also United States military overreach and early military pseudo-imperial expansion. We can also look at the prequels as a response to 9/11 and to the War on Terror. And, I know there are going to be people in my comment section who are going to be like, you don't have to bring politics into Star Wars. Why do you have to make everything political? It is political. It's been political since the 70s, and George Lucas would tell you that himself. I am 110% certain of it. And in his own words, Lucas described the prequel trilogy as the story of how a democracy becomes a dictatorship, the story of how good turns to bad but still believes itself justified in the process. And I think that that's a really important thing to remember, is that Anakin doesn't think that there's anything wrong with what he's doing, even when he knows that it is not the way that he has been taught. He thinks that what he's doing is justified. And that's sort of the flip side of the 9/11 conversation, which is that Anakin is a college kid getting red-pilled by an authority figure. And I feel like people don't talk about that enough. But back to the 9/11 thing. If we look at the literal Senate, the governmental structures that we are presented with in the prequels, keeping in mind that the prequels came out 1999, that one's clearly not 9/11 reaction material. But 2002, Attack of the Clones, 2005, Revenge of the Sith, and you look at the resolutions that the Senate are voting on. The Military Creation Act, the continued co-opting of the Jedi as a military. And then when you look at the way that Palpatine finally takes power as the Emperor of an empire, reorganizes the Republic into the first galactic empire, it is in direct response to the destruction of the Jedi Temple, which, if you look at the way that that is depicted, and also I think even more particularly at the way that Padme reacts to it, the fall of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant is the fall of the Twin Towers in New York. If they had been filmed and released years later, sure, you could make a case that it's just supposed to be a stand-in for any terror attack anywhere. But also, Star Wars is hardly the only piece of 9/11 reaction material that came out around then. If you fast forward just a couple years later, you get Battlestar Galactica in 2007, which, I personally watched and really enjoyed, and, that one's even more directly a response. But also, look at the Clone Wars animated series and really think about it as a response to the United States War on Terror. Look at how somebody like Asajj Ventress, as a separatist general, is depicted. Consider that the first Rebels, by the time we get to a show like Rebels, began as separatists. But I feel like some people aren't ready for that conversation.